The World Economic Forum's Top Global Risks 2026 reads like a warning siren for the Global South, mapping a future shaped by geopolitical strain, climate shocks, technological disruption, and information disorder. Yet some analysts resist the pull of pessimism, choosing to approach the risk landscape with strategic intent, arguing that turbulence should be read not only as danger, but as data. They advance a bold proposition: global risks are also market signals. Well, will the Global South be able to do this? We'll see about that. Joining me for more on this is Nweke, Global Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much, Mr. Nweke, for joining me today.
My pleasure, Perpetua. Thank you for having me. Now,
the latest global risk outlook from World Economic Forum paints the picture of a world entering a period of elevated geopolitical tension, deepening geoeconomic confrontation, accelerating climate issues, among other things. And then we also have intensifying information disorder. Do you fear that these might have grave impact on economies, especially even the Global South?
Well, let's be clear about one thing, Perpetua. There are problems to contend with. There is no question that these risks will have real and sometimes excruciating economic impacts, especially in the short term. Heightened geopolitical tensions, disrupt supply chains. They raise, energy and food prices. They also weaken currencies and scare away investors. That is probably, the most telling of all the doom. Climate shocks destroy infrastructure and livelihoods, while information disorder erodes trust in institutions and markets as well. But what I stress in, my pro-share opinion editorial is this: these risks are not emerging in isolation. They signal a structural transition in the global economy. Now, the post-Cold War order, is giving way to a more fragmented, multipolar system. That transition will definitely be destructive, but it also reshuffles competitive, advantages. For the Global South, the danger is not that risks exist. Risk will always exist, and risks are now universal. The real danger is misreading them purely as threat rather than misunderstanding or understanding where capital, production, diplomacy, and influence are being repriced. Economies that grasp this early can, reposition themselves. Those that don't will indeed suffer grave consequences. So my call essentially is this, Perpetua: let the Global South read the handwriting on the wall properly, because when they misread, then the impact will be very, very severe on them.
Well, isn't this expecting too much from a region that hasn't even made the best of good times? I mean, you're talking about these risks, not being read only as warnings, but also as signals of where the next phase of the world economy is being shaped. For who, actually?
Well, that's a fair and uncomfortable question, and it deserves an honest answer, because, we need to be honest with ourselves. Africa did miss opportunities during the periods of relative global stability. But today's moment is fundamentally different, Perpetua. This is not about, riding a global boom. It is about adapting to fragmentation. The skills required now: fragility, flexibility, diversification, diplomatic, agility, are not the same as those needed in, a rules-based, Western-centric order. In fact, many Global South economies are already used to, navigating uncertainty, volatile capital flows, shifting alliances, and imperfect institutions. What has changed is that the rest of the world is now entering Africa's reality, the reality that Africa has had to contend with for many decades. So this is not about, romantic optimism. It is about realism. The next phase of global growth will favor regimes that can serve as connectors, buffers, and alternative hubs. Africa does not need perfection. What Africa needs is strategic clarity, institutional discipline, and confidence in its own leverage. That is where the goodie lies for Africa.
Well, I'd like you to speak to us about the opportunities inherent in these risks. And, you also said something in that you talked about strategic choice before the Global South. Maybe if you can take these two together, I think they are one and the same.
Absolutely. The opportunities are concrete and already visible. Even the blind could see them. First, geoeconomic fragmentation is driving companies to diversify supply chains away from single country dependence. This opens space for Africa in manufacturing, agro-processing, mineral beneficiation, and logistics. Second, climate risk is forcing accelerated investment into renewable energy, climate smart agriculture, and green minerals. These are areas where Africa holds, comparative advantage. Recently, in October 2025, we hosted a group of, entrepreneurs, but also representatives of the Ministry of Aviation of Nigeria here in Belgium. And one of the places we paid, a visit to was what we call here the drone dock of Ostend City. Now, why is it of interest to them? It is of interest to them because smart agriculture requires the use of drone, and those are the sort of examples, of where Africa should be facing now. Now, third, geopolitical rivalry is increasing competition for partnerships. This gives Global South countries bargaining power. If they negotiate collectively, not in silos, and strategically as well, rather than, defensively, the opportunities hold there for them. Then number four, information disorder is creating demand for, trusted regional voices, credible data, and stable institutions. Countries that strengthen governance and transparency can attract capital fleeing uncertainty elsewhere. And so they capture them. So the opportunity is not abstract. It is about positioning Africa and the entire Global South as a solution space in a stressed global system.
Interesting. Maybe I should also put this to you. You posit that neutrality could be an asset. And while that is true, I must say, we have seen Trump impose tariffs on countries for doing business with countries under sanction. India, for example, even though they now have a deal, something of that sort, with the 25%, being taken away and all that. Do you see the Global South, risk? Beg your pardon. Do you see the Global South running that risk, of being put against Trump for wanting to be neutral in that scale in which you talk about it?
Yes, yes, indeed, Perpetua. That risk is real, and ignoring it will be seriously naive. But, neutrality today does not mean passivity or defiance. It means strategic non-alignment, and that essentially means engaging multiple blocs while staying within international law, diversifying trade partners, and avoiding excessive dependence on any single power. The irony is that even major powers are increasingly transactional. Tariffs, sanctions, and subsidies are now tools of industrial policy, not moral signaling. The Global South is not uniquely vulnerable. It is simply less protected. And there is a very strong difference there. The response is not choosing sides, blindly, but building resilience, regional trade under ACTA, for instance, value addition at home, diversified export markets, and, diplomatic coherence. Neutrality works when it is backed by economic depth, but also policy credibility.
Right, thank you so much, Collins Nweke, Global Affairs Analyst, for sharing your thoughts with us today. Thank you so much, and we'll see what will happen. Do enjoy the rest of the day.
A pleasure having you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Perpetua. Bye for now.
Yes, sir.